The storm had not started yet, but the sky over Maple Street looked bruised, like a secret someone did not want to say out loud. Inside Grayson's diner the lights were warm and the coffee smelled like the kind of Monday that could be fixed. Maya wiped the counter with a towel that had spent too many mornings doing the same thing, and she tried to ignore the ache behind her eyes. She had been on her feet since sunrise. She had student loans that always felt like a stranger sitting in the corner refusing to leave, and her rent had gone up again. But it was the kind of place where regulars knew her name and gave her grief with a smile, and in a town that kept losing things, that still felt like a kind of grace. The door opened and wind rolled in as if it were curious. An older woman stepped inside and paused as though the weight of the air itself pressed on her shoulders. She had neat silver hair and the kind of coat that had been mended with small careful stitches. Her eyes looked red, not from the cold, but from a sorrow that had been busy for some time. Maya tucked the towel under the counter, reached for a menu, and found her best version of a welcome. "Good afternoon," she said. "Take any seat you like. I will be right with you." The woman nodded and chose the stool closest to the register. She did not pick up the menu. She stared at the cracked tile behind the counter like a person stares at a grave they do not want to leave. Maya brought water with a wedge of lemon and set it down gently. "It is on the house," she said. "My name is Maya." The woman blinked. "Thank you, honey. I am Evelyn." Her voice had the softness of paper that had been folded and unfolded too many times. She did not touch the water. Her hands trembled a little and then tried to hide that fact by being very still. Maya recognized the silent choreography of people who are trying to look fine for others. It was the same choreography she used when her mother texted to ask how she was doing. Fine was easy to type. It was harder to be. "Can I get you something warm, Evelyn? A soup maybe, or some tea?" "Soup," the woman said. "If it is not too much trouble." "No trouble at all." Maya turned toward the kitchen window and called the order. "Chicken noodle, heavy on the broth." She looked back at Evelyn, who had begun to pull a small coin purse from the inside of her coat. Her fingers hovered over it as if she were trying to decide whether opening it would make something worse. "Take your time," Maya said. "You are safe here." Evelyn lifted her eyes. The pupils were glossy and rimmed with the palest gray. "Safe sounds like a song," she said. "I have not heard it in a while." Behind Evelyn, at a table near the back window, a man with gray at his temples watched the scene with his arms crossed. He had the deliberate posture of someone who measured himself against a standard only he could see. His name was Richard Grayson, owner of the diner. He was decent on paper, strict in practice, and lately, distant in every way that counted. He and Maya had a pattern. He would walk the floor checking things that did not need checking and she would pretend not to notice him, and both of them would call it working. Maya set a fresh cup on the saucer and poured Earl Grey, steam rising like a benediction. She carried it to the counter and placed it near Evelyn's hands. The woman's fingertips brushed the porcelain and stilled. Her mouth trembled, and then she said, "I am sorry, I did not mean to make a scene." "You are not making a scene," Maya said. "You are a person. Sometimes that is messy." Evelyn let out a sound that might have been a small laugh if it were not so tired. She reached into the coin purse and pulled out 2 wrinkled dollar bills and 3 quarters. She looked at the money like it was a story she did not like telling. "I can pay for the tea," she said. "I will figure out the soup." "Do not worry about any of it," Maya said before she could think of the consequences. "Lunch is on me today." Evelyn flinched. "I do not want charity." "It is not charity. It is kindness. We all borrow it and pay it forward when we can." Evelyn studied her face, and something trust-shaped passed through her expression. "Thank you," she whispered. Maya felt Richard's presence move closer behind her, the way you feel a shadow even if you are not looking at it. She kept her back straight and returned to the register. The bell above the kitchen dinged. She brought the soup and placed it in front of Evelyn, who was trying to sit tall, trying not to cry. The first spoonful seemed to surprise her. Food has a way of convincing the body it deserves to live. She ate carefully, like a person who did not want to waste gratitude. A younger couple in the booth by the window asked for the check. Maya slipped away to handle them, then returned to stand near Evelyn as if her closeness could keep the fragile world from cracking. The front door swung open again and Caleb, who drove the city bus on Route 5, came in for his usual turkey club. He gave Maya a salute. When he saw Evelyn he tipped his cap, kind eyes taking a note of her sadness the way real men do, quietly and with respect. Maya reached for the register, entered the price of soup with a discount, and slid a 10 from her apron pocket. Tips had been good that morning. She pressed the cash into the machine and punched in no sale so the drawer would open. She took out change, then thought better of it, closed the drawer, and placed the bills near the screen so she could settle later. She knew Richard was watching. She could feel the weight of his policy binder from across the room. After a few more bites, Evelyn's spoon slowed. She looked at Maya with a kind of helplessness that made Maya want to pull up a stool and sweep the entire world off the counter if that would help. "My husband died in January," Evelyn said quietly. "He was the kind of man who kept promises, even the small ones. We made a rule in our house that if you say I will be there, you do not make your loved ones carry the weight of a doubt. He had a heart attack while changing a light bulb, just like that, as if God flipped a switch. I have been trying to behave like I am fine. I think I ran out." Maya felt her own throat tighten. She thought of her father's silence, of the last time she had seen him reach for the door, the soft apology in the way it closed. She had learned to talk about it with a joke because grief that is funny is grief that people will let you bring to work. She did not joke now. "I am very sorry," she said. "I am glad you are here." Evelyn nodded. "Today was my moving day," she said. "The landlord raised the rent. My social security did not. I packed what I could in storage and brought a small box of photographs and his watch in my purse. I took the bus to see an apartment in a senior building. On my way here I opened the coin purse to see if I had enough for lunch. I think the clasp on the watch caught on the seam. The watch fell. I heard it hit the sidewalk. When I looked down it was gone. Just gone. I think it must have slid into the storm drain. I have been walking back and forth looking like a crazy woman, listening for a promise inside a hole in the street." Maya felt it like a physical thing. The way a small object can hold a person's entire devotion. She saw the old couple in her mind, a man changing a light bulb in a kitchen that smelled like lemons, a woman laughing at the way he cursed the stubborn fixture, the tender argument that happens when people who love each other pretend to fight. She placed a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "We will find it," she said, even though she did not know how. Richard cleared his throat. "Maya, can I see you in the office for a moment?" She turned. He stood with his eyebrows pulled together like a fence. She could almost hear the chapter title in his head. House Rules. She wanted to say not now, not this time, but she also needed the job that came with the rules. She looked at Evelyn. "I will be right back, okay? Caleb is right there if you need anything." Evelyn nodded and reached for a napkin, covering the tremor in her mouth. Maya followed Richard into the small office at the back. The room had a window that looked at the alley, a desk that had collected stubborn paperclips, and a framed photo of Richard with a fishing rod, smiling in a way Maya had not seen in person. He closed the door with a soft click. "I saw you comp the soup," he said. She met his eyes. Yes, he was not cruel. He was careful. There is a difference, but to people who are hurting, they often feel the same. "We have a policy," he said. "You know why we have it. We keep the doors open because people pay for what they order. We cannot be a shelter." Maya swallowed. She felt anger rise, but it wore her grief's face. It is not a policy problem, she said. It is a human problem. She lost her husband. She lost his watch into a drain. She might be losing her apartment. She needed soup. I can pay for it from my tips. Richard looked at the desk and then at the wall. He rubbed the back of his neck. It is not about $12. Then what is it about? Control, he almost said, but he did not. It is about fairness, he tried instead. If you give free food to one person, word gets around. Then you will have a line. We cannot feed the whole city. We do not need to feed the whole city, Maya said. We need to feed one person, right now. That is the exact size of the job in front of us. Richard's mouth pressed into a thin shape. The more you let your heart run the cash register, the more you end up with neither heart nor register. He heard the tone of himself, then softened. Look, I know you have a big heart. I am not trying to beat it down. I am trying to keep the doors open. Maya drew a steady breath. Let me keep this one door open, she said. For her. Richard did not answer for a long moment. Outside, someone dropped cutlery and the sound rang like a bell inside a chapel. He nodded once. Fine, this time. But you cannot turn this place into your personal rescue mission. If you want to give someone money, do it out of your own pocket, not the till. Keep the drawer straight. That is all I am asking. Maya nodded. Thank you. When she stepped back into the diner, Evelyn was staring at the window, her hands folded on the counter, the tea growing pale. Maya walked to her and placed a hand lightly on her arm. I am going to take my break, she said. Do you feel up to a small walk? Evelyn blinked. To the drain. Yes. Evelyn's mouth twitched. A tiny brave thing. All right. Caleb met Maya's eyes and made a small yes gesture. I have your tables, he said. Richard heard and did not object. Outside the air was colder. They walked slowly toward the corner where a square of iron teeth waited over a mouth in the street. The traffic moved and sighed. A child cried somewhere and a mother's voice followed with comfort gentle as a blanket. Evelyn knelt, wincing, and peered through the grate. The sides were slick and lined with the silt of many storms. At the bottom there was water like a small dark secret. A gum wrapper floated, a penny flashed, and something that might be a bottle cap winked and sank. I heard it hit, Evelyn said, trying to keep her voice steady. It had his initials on the back. He would tap the face when he was nervous, like he was reminding time to behave. Maya lay on her stomach on the sidewalk, not caring about the grit. She reached her arm through the bars and felt around blindly, fingers skimming muck and pebbles. She could not reach the bottom. She pulled her arm back, smeared with sooty. She wiped her hand on a napkin from her apron. She looked at the hardware store across the street and then at the diner window where Richard's silhouette was framed by light. She could taste the conflict like metal on her tongue. Wait here, she said to Evelyn. Do not move. I am going to borrow something helpful. She hurried inside. Richard looked ready to scold and then saw her face and thought better of it. What are you doing? I need the magnetic flashlight from the emergency kit and that long grabber from the storage closet, she said. And maybe the mop handle if the screw-on hook is still attached. Richard stared for a second, then opened the closet behind the office and handed her the grabber. He hesitated, then grabbed the flashlight too. He followed her outside without announcing that he would. He stopped a step away from the edge, arms crossed against a wind that had sharpened. The two of them knelt beside Evelyn. She did not look surprised to see the owner join them. She looked like a person who had reached the place where no surprise is left. Maya lowered the flashlight through the grate, its beam cutting a small bright hole in the gloom. The light found the penny, the bottle cap, the slime, and then moved on. Richard unscrewed the hook from the mop handle and passed it to her. She extended the grabber as far as it would go, then used the hook to dip the claw below the water, fishing without sight. Each time she pulled it up, the claw brought a sad collection of grit and nothing. Cars passed. People walked around them and looked back, curious or wary. A teenager in a varsity jacket stopped and asked what they were doing. Searching for a watch, Maya said, and he shrugged like loss was a kind of weather the forecast always gets right. He moved on. The wind carried a smell of rain. Evelyn's voice was small. He wore it every day. He said it made the day behave, like you could wind order into chaos. I do not know how to live in a world where a promise falls into a hole. Maya felt something inside her brave itself. One more try, she said, to the drain, to fate, to the stubborn piece of time that would not be tamed. She lowered the grabber again, sweeping slowly, as if the watch were a shy animal that needed patience. The claw bumped something that felt not like stone and not like trash. Her pulse stood up inside her. She squeezed the trigger. The grabber closed on whatever it had found. She drew it up carefully, hand steady, breath held. A small shape rose through the water and caught the light. It was the watch. It hung from the claw by its leather strap, dripping black water like it had just been baptized into a tougher faith. The face was smudged, but the long hand still pointed, stubborn and imperfect. Maya exhaled a laugh that felt like the first day after a long fever. Evelyn pressed her knuckles to her mouth and began to cry without sound. Richard reached for the watch and held it carefully. He looked different holding someone else's time. He used the edge of his sleeve to wipe the glass, shook water from the strap, and then looked at the back. His eyebrows lifted a millimeter. There were initials, J and E, carved with a hand that had wanted to get it right. He passed the watch to Evelyn through the bars of the grate. She did not reach through. She reached around and gripped his wrist with one surprisingly strong hand, and Richard did not pull away. He looked at Maya and something like apology crossed his face. He unscrewed the grate cover with the help of the mop handle and his pocket knife, muscles straining. The cover shifted and then lifted. He stepped down into the shallow pit, shoes filling with cold, and cupped the watch in both hands like it was a bird. He handed it up to Evelyn and climbed back out, breathing hard. Evelyn held the watch against her chest. She closed her eyes. "Thank you," she said. She opened her eyes again and looked from Richard to Maya as if she were seeing something holy and ordinary at the same time. "My husband's name was James. He gave me this watch on our 10th anniversary. He said time would not always be kind, but we would try our best to be." Richard nodded once. He looked at his wet shoes and then at Evelyn's trembling hands and then at Maya's face, which had tears drying in stripes she had not noticed. He cleared his throat. "Come on back inside," he said. "I will make you both a grilled cheese the way my mother used to. I will put it on my tab." Back in the diner the noise felt softer. Caleb clapped his hands once when he saw the watch and everyone in earshot smiled without needing a reason. Richard went behind the line even though he rarely cooked now. He buttered the bread and sprinkled shredded cheddar and a little parmesan, then pressed the sandwich on the flat top under a weight that had been his father's. He slid the knife through the crackly crust and the cheese stretched in a patient golden ribbon. He did 2 more sandwiches before anyone could protest. Evelyn ate like a person remembers how to breathe. Between bites she told them about James' teaching shop class at the high school, about how he used to fix neighbors' lawnmowers on Saturdays and never took money, about how he had proposed in the grocery aisle where the coffee lived because that was where they had met. The story settled around the room like a blanket. The rain began outside, quiet at first and then sincere. When the plates were empty and Evelyn's hands had steadied, she reached into her purse for the coin purse again, stubborn pride still alive. Richard shook his head. "Do not insult my grilled cheese like that," he said. "It is a gift. It is also market research because I needed a reason to believe I still remember how to cook." Evelyn smiled at him and then looked at Maya. She hesitated, then pulled a folded paper from the bottom of her bag. It was an eviction notice with a date highlighted in pink. The ink had bled in the rain. "I do not know what to do," she said. "I do not want to be a problem in a place that smells like cinnamon and competence. I just did not want to eat alone." Maya took the paper and read it like a person reads a cliff. She felt the old helpless anger start to climb, the part of her that always wanted to wrestle the world into fairness. She looked at Richard. His mouth did that thing it did when he was thinking through numbers and hearts at the same time. He turned the eviction notice to the back and began to write with the pen he kept tucked in his sleeve like a magician. An address, a time, a name. "There is a community center on Oak Ridge," he said. "Tuesdays they do free legal advice for seniors. Tell them Richard from Grayson's sent you. The director's name is Carmen. She used to be my little sister's best friend. She will help you file for an extension and apply for the relief program the city passed last month. It is a mess of forms, but it works if someone bothers to translate government into human." Evelyn held the paper like it was warm. "Thank you," she said. She looked at Maya. "You saved the watch. He saved the roof. I am not sure how to carry this much grace." "One step at a time," Maya said. "And if you need a place to sit and not be alone, you come here. At the corner stool. It is reserved for people who are learning the next brave thing." Evelyn laughed, and the sound filled the room and made the rain sound less like sorrow and more like clean. She stood, slipped on her coat, and touched Maya's cheek with one dry palm. "You remind me of my granddaughter," she said. "She lives in Seattle. She is a nurse, always tired, always kind. It is a dangerous way to be, but it is the only way I know that works." When Evelyn left, the bell over the door chimed a note that felt deliberate. Maya watched her go, then turned back to the counter to clean up the tea and the soup bowl and the crumbs that glowed like evidence. Richard stood beside her, silent for a long time. The steady clatter of plates and voices resumed. The diner remembered its rhythm. "You were right," he said finally, voice low. "Sometimes the job in front of you is exactly the size of one person." Maya glanced at him. "You were right too. We cannot feed the whole city. But we can feed the part of it that walks through the door today." He nodded. He rested his hands on the counter. "My father used to run this place," he said. "He believed in three things: hot food, honest books, and doors that open as often as they can. I am trying to remember how to live like that. I forget sometimes because fear speaks loud. You have a way of arguing with fear without yelling. I notice it, even when I act like I do not." Maya felt embarrassment pinch her ears and tried to laugh it away. "I am just a waitress who likes to win small wars." Richard gave a tiny smile. "Well, Commander, I am going to do a silly thing." He took his wallet from his back pocket and slid a few bills onto the counter. He pushed them toward her. "Consider this an official reimbursement for that soup, and an unofficial apology for being a statue when I should have been a person sooner." Maya hesitated, then nodded and tucked the money into the register. The drawer chimed and closed. She looked at Richard with a curiosity that crept up on her. "What happened to the man in that fishing photo in your office? The one who looks like he knows how to laugh?" Richard's gaze traveled to the window where the rain blurred the world into a watercolor. He took a breath and let it out slow. He got a divorce he did not see coming and a son who does not return his calls. He learned to solve problems with spreadsheets because they do not cry in public. He forgot that there are other kinds of math. Maya nodded. "Maybe we practice," she said. She gestured at the tables, at the coffee refills, at the 100 quiet opportunities that happen between orders. "This is a good classroom." They worked the rest of the shift with the contained warmth of people who had shared something and agreed not to ruin it by talking it to death. Caleb told the story of the watch to his entire bus on the last run, and by evening people came in to ask how it ended, like they were checking on a neighbor's health. Richard stayed later than usual, drying glasses with a towel like the old days when his father had broadcast baseball games on the small radio behind the register. He even hummed once without noticing. Close to 9 a young woman came in, hair damp from the rain, hoodie zipped high. She ordered coffee and stared at her phone like it owed her money. Maya set the cup down and asked if she wanted pie. The woman shook her head, then looked up at Maya's face and changed it to a yes. Maya brought her a slice of apple with a scoop of melting vanilla. After a while the woman spoke into the air, not exactly to Maya and not exactly to herself. "My mom had another chemo today," she said. "I am trying so hard to be the strong one. It is heavy." Maya stood there with a hand on the back of the booth as if that posture could lend a spine to someone who needed it. "You do not have to be strong all at once," she said. "You can be strong in pieces. You can rest between." The woman listened. Her mouth twitched. She took a bite of pie and the warmth did the small holy work it always does. At closing time Maya counted the drawer. It balanced perfectly. She turned to find Richard leaning in the office doorway, tie loosened. He looked like a man who had been carrying something and had set it down for a minute. "Good work today," he said. "For the record, thanks, boss." He grimaced. "Please do not call me that when I just made grilled cheese for the whole class like a middle school volunteer." Maya laughed. "Good night, Richard." After she locked up and stepped into the rain, the town smelled like wet asphalt and relief. She pulled her hood up and started toward the bus stop. Halfway there she heard a voice call her name. She turned. Evelyn stood under a streetlight with a clear umbrella and a smile that lit her whole face. She lifted her wrist. The watch ticked. "I wanted you to see it working," she said, as if time itself had chosen to cooperate because it had been kindly asked. They hugged, not as strangers anymore but as people who had agreed to keep each other's names safe. Evelyn pressed a small envelope into Maya's hand. "Do not argue," she said. "It is not payment. It is a thank you in the language I have today." Maya opened it after she boarded the bus. Inside was a photograph of a couple dancing in a kitchen. The man had flour on his cheek. The woman had a dish towel in her hand like a flag. On the back, in neat cursive, it said, "Thank you for reminding me that love is a verb. If you ever need a grandmother who tells you to sit down and eat, I am available. Evelyn." Maya smiled until her face hurt. When she got home to her studio apartment, she taped the photo to the wall near the cheap lamp with the good light. She heated leftover pasta and ate it standing up because she could not sit still. The rain beat time on the window. She set her alarm for an hour earlier, because she wanted to bring muffins from the bakery on 3rd to work tomorrow and feed the kind of morning that had room for miracles. In the days that followed, the diner became the sort of place where a dozen small mercies were served with the coffee and no one put a price on them. People came in with tight faces and left with looser ones. Richard wrote a new rule on the whiteboard in the office. "Keep the drawer honest. Keep the door open. Use your judgment like a grown-up." He signed it with a smiley face he pretended not to have drawn. Evelyn went to the community center and sat with Carmen, who spoke bureaucracy like a second language and kindness like a first. The extension went through. The relief program covered more than anyone expected. Evelyn returned to the diner the next week wearing the watch and carrying a small box of lemon squares that tasted like memory. She sat at the corner stool. She talked about James, but now the stories had more sunlight in them. A month later, a man walked in with hesitant shoulders and a baseball cap pulled low. He looked around like a tourist in a city that had once been his. He chose the counter seat 2 from Evelyn and ordered black coffee. His hands shook when he lifted the cup. Richard stepped from the kitchen and froze. The cup in the man's hand rattled against the saucer. Their eyes met and then did not know where to go. Maya felt time tilt. She looked at Richard, at the fishing photo memory that lived in the back office, and then at the man at the counter who had the same mouth when he was trying not to cry. She approached carefully, carrying another cup as if an extra coffee could justify her presence. She set it down and said to the man, "My name is Maya." "What is yours?" He hesitated and said, "Aaron." Richard's voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "Hi, Aaron." The room held its breath. Aaron looked at Maya like he needed permission to be a son in public. She nodded once, almost invisible, the smallest ushering. He turned and faced his father. "I heard about the watch," he said. "Mom told me when she called to check on you, which she never does, which is how I knew something had changed. I thought maybe, if you had room, we could start a small conversation. The kind that does not try to fix a decade in 5 minutes. The kind where we sit and drink coffee and remember that we used to be more than the worst story we told about each other." Richard took a step forward. He looked at Maya as if thanking her for a language lesson she had not known she had given. He nodded and said, "I have room." They talked. It was messy and halting and real. It lasted through lunch rush and into the quiet that happens in the lull before dinner. They did not solve everything, but they solved one thing. They agreed to meet next week at the park with the bridge where Aaron used to drop sticks into the river and race them to the other side. Richard said he would bring sandwiches. Aaron said he would not cancel. When the diner finally closed that night, Maya turned the open sign to dark and wiped the counter slowly as if it were an altar. She felt tired in the good way, where your bones know what they did with their hours. She thought about the watch ticking on Evelyn's wrist, about a father and son relearning the shape of each other's names, about a town that had begun to believe that small acts could be policy. She washed the rag and hung it in the back to dry. On her walk home the sky was clear and honest. She passed the storm drain that had tried to swallow the past. She looked down through the bars at the quiet water and thought about all the things people lose in the spaces between one sidewalk square and the next. She thought about all the things people find when someone kneels beside them and refuses to give up. She touched her chest the way Evelyn had touched the watch, and then she kept walking, because there was tomorrow, and she wanted to be on time for it.